Okay, my friends, before we get started, I attempted to do this in a humorous way, but I decided I better explain to you before we get too deep into this how serious this is. This is whole blood, and in whole blood, you see all these different metals? There's 26 different metals they're testing for. 26 elements. These are different metals that are in blood. Blood metals transfer things. They're called transition metals, and primarily they're right in this area. These are the ones that transfer. They have charges on them. They carry things back and forth. Transition metals. And when you have those, that's blood. Now, they just went up to asteroid Bennu, came back with a sample from it, and that is a heart. So I see no reason whatsoever to expect that there's not going to be a ton of these metals in there, virtually the same as we see here. And they have done all the tests, so there's nothing for them to do other than match these quantities, and this is whole blood, and these are quantities and types, and then you get into the plasma, and it's a little different, and there's different areas in the where I don't know where they landed, but there's going to be different valves. I'll show you that in a second. And then there's the serum, and I know this for a fact. There will be 3 different types of blood there because we find them here on Earth too. I'll show you one that came out of Earth, which was in a stone that got snapped open. All right, this was Phil Harris. Unfortunately, Phil passed, but I gave him the challenge, 15-minute challenge. I said, you go out and see if you can find something in 15 minutes. And he saw this red spot on this rock, and he whacked it with a hammer, and it split right across the plumbing. So he's right into the buckets of blood, really. And this is the serum, which is the lymph. And this is the expended blood, and this is the red blood. It's exactly what you would expect to find if you cut a heart open. And then after an hour or two, that red stuff that you were just looking at turned black. It oxygenated, deoxygenated. Because originally it had an extra oxygen. The 3 is the red, the Fe2O3, 3 oxygens. Fe2O2 is this, where it's, or now this case. So it's giving up on oxygen. This stays the same, doesn't matter. The yellow is like lymph fluid, serum, whatever you want to call it. That's a heart. And these are the valves of the heart. And Bennu is also a heart. So it's coming back with blood. There's no other possibility. All right, I showed you Phil's heart when it was wet and then when it dried up a little bit. This is Bennu. This is Psyche. These are the valves of a heart. And this is what a heart looks like when it's alive. And this is an iron meteorite. All right, they call it iron. It's actually metal. They're heavy metals. And that's what this is too, which is Psyche. Psyche is a heart. You see the valves? You see them? The same thing that Phil said. Same thing. It's just nothing more than buckets of blood in there. So wherever they landed, I don't know. But this is where they landed, somewhere on here. And whatever they took off of here is going to be blood. But see, there's different styles. There's the brown, there's the yellow, there's the black. You see the black over here? And then look at this. These are tubes coming out. That's a tube. And it's surrounded by some form of tissue that held that tube so it could wiggle around a little bit. And they also had, there's another tube here coming out. That's not a crater. Can't even see that, can you? I'm sorry, my friends. All right, that's a tube coming out. That right down there is a tube coming out. These different colors are the colors of blood. Red and black and yellow are the colors of blood, and the brownish. That's the tendon that holds the muscle to the heart. These are the valves. Wherever they landed, I don't care where it was, this is almost 100% blood. And they already have said that it has all the clays and so forth, which is nothing more than flesh. Now, you come out to Psyche, and here you have the exact same situation, only Psyche had to have been heated up. Now, remember all those metals. Remember, all those metals are in blood. And there's a couple of spots that are going to be extremely heavy in vein and artery blood, black and red blood. Now this cooked, but it didn't cook enough to completely cook, but you can see, they can see this is all metal. These are all metals. All right, and that's why they're so interested in this. Oh, there's going to be a ton of money to be made up there. Well, maybe. But these are actually heart valves. All right, and this has the same sort of stuff. These are not craters. There's a ton of blood going on, obviously, around the heart. This is what it looks like. This is just what services the muscle. All right, this is just the servicing of the muscle, because you got to go 24 hours a day. The rest is the buckets of blood. All right, so this is what the heart looks like. They got all that stuff around it to service all the muscle. Blue is our vein blood, and red is artery blood. And there's going to be tubes coming in and out, a lot of different tubes. These are the main ones. But there's, when I say coming in and out, they're going to blow out of here. All right, it's just what happens when they dry up. They squirt out their little spots. So in other words, my point being is, a lot of this stuff could be just arteries and veins that have sort of popped. And they're little round tubes here and there, And this one's sticking out, so we know that's a tube, and we know the one down here is sticking out, that's a tube. And these are the different colors. And that is where the tendon is, that is on the, hold on, where is it? Where did you go? Can't find it. Oh, here it is. All right, think of this. Just think of it this way. See all these little tubes coming down? They're going to blow out here and there all over the place, and you're going to see them as little tips of tubes that blew out. Now, this is the tendon, that white stuff here. This is the tendon, and that locks in so the muscle can contract. Now, all of this is like gluey stuff to glue these two tubes right down into the valves. All right, and what is a valve? Valve says that your blood can only go that way, it can't come back. And that valve says that it can only go this way and it can't come back. So that's the way it flows the blood through and so forth. And then there's also the one up in here for the lymph. Now this is kind of floppy, but it's made to do that so that those tubes don't come out of there. They're glued, literally glued tube in there. I'll show you in a second. And this stuff erodes and turns brown and yellow. This stays pretty white, and the muscle has turned to mostly metals. All right, so the tube coming out of it, I had a shot showing a tube. Here it is right here. That's the tube that comes out. And it's just basically glued in. These are glued in down here into the valves. All right, so these, as far as I'm concerned, that's hard to deny that that's a heart. And especially now they're coming back with all this sample of this, and it's here on Earth right now. And all I want to know is it saturated with all these metals? Now they do already know that. I mean, I'd like to know where they landed and what concentrations there are, because as I showed you, this gives a complete concentration list of all of the different metals. All right, and the measurements of them, and what they're supposed to be if you're healthy. Basically, this was to figure out if you're healthy. So if this creature was healthy when he died, you're going to have pretty much, it's going to be either serum, or it's going to be plasma, or it's going to be whole blood. It depends where they landed. But we should be able to get a printout of what is the concentrations of these in the sample. Now we already know, as a matter of fact, hold on. All right, this is the latest from that. It was in February. It says Banyu contains plentiful amounts of water, which is, we're water creatures, locked up in minerals like clays. Our flesh is clay. Also rich in carbon. We are carbon creatures. Nitrogen, sulfur, and phosphorus. Every layer of your body is coated by a phospholipid layer, which is called a membrane. Even this is phospholipids. My friend here, Caesar the goose, his feathers were made from phospholipids, which is feldspar, and it boils down into aluminum silicates. All right, I said the feathers are very heavy in phospholipids. Look at this. This is about feathers. And fossilized skin reveals coevolution with feathers. Basically, skin and feathers are about the same, they're saying. The metabolism in feathers, dinosaurs and early birds, basically the same as skin. Calcium, and in particular, phosphate ions. Phosphate is phosphorus, that are liberated during decay. Well, in the Great Flood, yes, because it was a hot water flood. Corneocytes contain sources of both of these ions. Ions just mean they either have excess electrons or not enough electrons. All right, and that happens from cooking. All right, so during terminal differentiation, intracellular concentrations of calcium increase. The calcium is pushed into the cells. And keratin chains, this is the thing to remember, keratin chains are extensively phosphorylated. That's phosphorus. All right, these are the membranes. And they're all extensively phosphorylated. Further, they contain these lipid granules, which are the fats, so that they can sort of move around. That's how membranes work. Membranes they're bilipid layers, phosphorus and lipid fats. That's what they are. So they're extensively loaded with phosphorus and fats. And they are rich in phosphorus and phosphate, which is basically right here. And when it cooked, it boiled down a lot of it to the aluminum silicates, and that is what turned into feldspar. That's feldspar. Even though it was feathers at one time. Now it's feldspar. And almost every rock I have is coated with feldspar, even though they're body parts. You know, they got feldspar all over them. Anyway, that's what that is. So we know now that these are densely packed with these keratins and collagens and phospholipids. That's what preserved all these things. All right, so that's my evidence. All right, I know this sounds crazy, but they are hearts. That's a heart, that's Bennu. And I want to know what metals in what concentrations they found. That'll be the smoking gun. I mean, I've got a lot of smoke coming out of this gun already, but we could use a little more. And that is nothing but metals. They know this. And they know this one is literally, this is Psyche. And it's the same structure. And it's 100% loaded with metals. You can see this one has been cooked off. It takes 3,000 degrees or so to smelt. Smelting means to burn off all the excess stuff and end up with the metals. Now let me show you something. Blood is a special case. Can I show you a metal asteroid or meteorite that has blood in it? Inside, deep inside it? Yes, I can. Here it is. Okay, my friends, this is a meteorite. And all of these different crystallizations here are different looking little colors, if you can see, a little bit different. And it's called flocculation. They sort of get together according to their nature so that they create crystallization patterns in there. And when you cut across it and throw a little acid on it to etch it a little bit, you see these patterns. That's what all those 26 different metals are. And this is a metal meteorite. Now, whether it was a heart or a lung or a liver, and I think it probably was a liver. Liver is loaded, and it doesn't have all the chambers of the heart or the lungs. But it does have blood. And there's the blood right there, the black and the red. Now I have a better shot of this that's closer up. Same meteorite. But you see the different colors? Those are different metals. You see this up here? There's blood here. From whatever this was, there was some kind of an entryway here. It might have been, this could have been a heart. And this is very red blood. And this is the very black blood, which is the vein blood. Now, see all the different patterns? Those are the different metals. And that's why when I showed you all those different metals that they're looking for, it tells you whether you're healthy or not. You have to have those metals. Those are transition metals. They work in watery solutions. Aqueous solution, which your blood is a watery solution. And they go through and they pick up little bits and pieces of things and deliver them and then grab the bad stuff and bring it back. Arteries bring the good stuff, veins bring back the bad stuff. And then the lymph is the yellow stuff. Now, if there's a lymph, if I could find lymph on there, which I don't know how that will react. Lymph is just mostly water. So these have the red blood cells and so forth. Lymph, I don't think we would see specifically, but I have to look for that. All right. What I'm going to present to you is based on my hero, Immanuel Velikovsky, who searched every library, museum, cultural center, everywhere in the entire world, all of the stories that they had, and they came up, virtually everybody had the same story. The Earth was almost hit by what they called a rogue comet, a fiery comet, that was ejected by Jupiter. It ended up being Venus. So here's what Velikovsky says. His scheme, Venus, took the form of a huge rogue comet, which is the same size as Earth, after being ejected by Jupiter. And this was right around 1500 BC, not long before 1500 BC. That's only 3,500 years ago, approximately. It then hurtled sunward, sideswiped Earth, caused the Great Flood and the boiling of the waters because it was hotter than hell. And it was as big as us, and it's impacted our atmosphere and combusted the whole Earth, and everything jumbled up, and it was a disaster. And then it sideswiped Earth twice and collided with Mars. And then it settled into an almost perfect circular orbit. I will show you that collision, and I'm going to do it right now just to be sure we don't miss it, because I can show you the collision spot between Venus and Mars. All right, this is Mars. This is as wide as the whole United States. And this is Venus. This is a huge, huge, huge gouge as well, only it's really an electrical discharge. All right, I have all the details on all the things that we're looking at right here, so I don't want to go over them 10 times, but this is Mars. This was just hit by Venus. And here is Venus when it discharged. You see, this is electrical discharge. And Venus spins backwards. So when it hit Mars, it didn't sort of roll with Mars. It gouged backwards into Mars, discharging all this electrical vapor discharge into Mars and gouged this huge trail through it. And it also liberated like electrical discharges into the surface as well. I think I showed that somewhere in here. Here it is right here. Here's how wide this thing is. They say, oh, they found a volcano over here. That's not a volcano. That's an impact site. And this stuff here is electrical discharge as the thing is coming through here. All right, that's not just a valley. All right, that is an electrical discharge impact. And Venus was the source of that electrical energy because it spins backwards. It's extremely charged. It's over 800 degrees. That's nothing more than energy, excess energy. It wants to discharge somewhere, and when it got to Earth, it did that to Earth. It heated up and boiled the Earth and cooked our skies and burnt everything on Earth because of the energy discharge, which is nothing more than electricity. And when it hit Mars, the same thing. The electricity scraped through, and it discharged all over here and made all this patterns on Venus itself from its discharging. All right, that's like if you ever see. I think the cathode, one or the other is the one that spits it out. I can't remember now. It's just off the top of my head. But they erode just like this. They look just like this. And in the meantime, they're spewing out these bits and pieces against whatever the discharge is too. All right, this should clear it up. You have a cathode and an anode. The cathode is positive, all right? The cathode in this case is going to be Mars because it wants to accept electrons, all right? It's a positive electrode where the reduction is the gain of electrons occurs. It gains electrons, while the anode is the negative electrode where oxidation, loss of electrons takes place. So Mars is the gainer of electrons, and it fuses into it, and Venus is the emitter of that juice, which is nothing more than juice. And there it is right there. It's emitting all that juice into, in our case, it was Earth a couple of times, and then also Mars. It actually impacted with Mars. That was the case there. Us, it didn't impact with. But you can see all that's electrical discharge. And it hit here and scraped right across. And that's a deep gouge. That's extremely deep gouge. And it runs the whole width of, just gigantic. And I've showed you all these other things. And they're claiming this is some big discovery. Now, I'm going to show you so much other stuff. And plus they say it was emitted from Jupiter. Well, here's Jupiter. And here's the red spot. And there is the Earth, which is the same size as Venus. And it was spit out of Jupiter 3,500 or so years ago. And that's when it caused all the catastrophe on Earth. And then it hit Mars. And if you see this, this is not a great storm. I'll show you what it is in a second. But the planet is rotating this way. The atmosphere is coming this way. And this is called Venus Mons. It's a mound. And this Venus Mons is on the human body too. We'll talk about that in a second. And as this mound impacts with this atmosphere, it has to swirl around it. So they say it's a big storm. No, it's not. It's just impacting with this that's coming at it. The planet's going this way, the gases are coming this way, and it just swirls around. That's why it makes all that big swirls. Now, this is a stunner. It is a stunner, and it just is what it is. They said in the ancient past, and every culture had the same story, that Jupiter emitted a fiery comet, and it turned out to be Venus. Okay, if you've been following me, I talk about this all the time. This is Metamorphosis by Ovid, O-V-I-D. He wrote 15 books, starting from the creation, ages of mankind, the flood, Deucalion, who was Noah. Now this is the Greek. He was Greek. So he was writing about 250 myth stories that were passed down, and he consolidated them all. This was his magnum opus, and all the way down to the time of Julius Caesar, which was his time, which was about 49 BC. So maybe he was like Roman, I don't know, Greek Roman, that type of thing. Now, the key to this whole thing is, though, metamorphosis was what he was talking about. Transformation, changing something, transforming. Unifying theme amongst the episodes of his work, Metamorphosis. Ovid raises its significance explicitly right in the opening lines of the poem. In nova fert animus mutatus decere formos corpora, which means I intend to speak of forms changed into new entities. Accompanying the theme is often violence inflicted upon a victim whose transformation becomes part of the natural landscape. We're turning these creatures into the landscape. The theme amalgamates, blah, blah, blah. Now, there's a great variety among the type of transformations that take place. A great variety. From humans to inanimate objects like the Nile River or a constellation or an animal or a plant or ants or fungi or mushroom, or turn into humans. So these gods can turn into human. They can turn from one sex to another. So Jupiter is a planet. It can turn into another sex, and it can turn itself into the size of a human if it wants. It can make itself the size of an insect. It doesn't matter. It says they can turn themselves into colored pebbles and whatever they wanted. And then they make it sound like it's just a joke, but it isn't a joke. They could do this. And they did do this, and that's how the gods came down and had sex with all the women. They just changed their size. And the same thing happened with Jupiter giving birth to Venus. And here's exactly where it came from. And if you don't want to see a female body part, you don't want to watch this. All right, so prepare thyself. Okay, so again, as I told you, I am looking at it through Velikovsky's eyes and seeing what supports his claims. And Venus was ejected from Jupiter, as all the cultures in the world said, and they also said there was a great catastrophe and flood. And there was several of these events, as Velikovsky shows, and it says it hit Mars. I just showed you, that's very, very clear. Now, I'm going to show you some female body parts that show that it's quite likely and almost certainty that Jupiter itself, who was a god and is a god, and if gods are immortal, so it's got to still be there somewhere, and it gave birth to Venus through a normal vaginal delivery. And I'm going to show you that right now. So get ready. Here it comes. Now, this is where the great red spot is. And it is a mound called the Venus Mons, which we also have on a woman's vagina, is called the Venus Mons. Now, it was a mound, and the planet came right out, ejected out. And as it did, the rotation of Jupiter would cause this to spin backwards, and it does. Venus is the only planet that spins backwards, so it spit out and rolled backwards like this, where Venus is rolling this way. So ideally, Jupiter is rolling this way normally, which is all we do. Everybody does the right-hand rule. Venus is going backwards, which is what would happen. It'd eject out of here, and it would roll itself backwards, just as we see the clouds rolling backwards. So we would have a rolling backwards planet, which we do. All right, you see the clouds rolling backwards? This is going this way. This would pop out and go this way, just like we're seeing. So there's no mystery here when you stop and think and look at the details. Now, again, here comes the vagina. There it is right there. And that's the great red spot. And that is a regular picture from a close flyby. And it is identical to a vagina, even the hair follicles and everything that run around the edge. This is the key right here. That's the tab that locks the vagina into the body part. You see that little flap coming up there and that tab? And the rest is pretty obvious. I mean, you know, they just are what they are. That's just what it is. Now, and there's that tab. There's the tab right there. All right, there's the hair follicles and all that, and it's got the labia minora and majora and the clitoris and all that, and there is the venous mons. That is the thing that's rubbing through. It's through the atmosphere, causing this swirling, what they call a big red spot storm. Now, the last thing I want to say is these ancient texts, they had everything written down about battles in the heavens, and every single culture on earth, 100%, spoke of giants. They spoke of dragons. They spoke of extraterrestrial battles in the heavens. They spoke of these catastrophes, and the Triassic was this flood event when Venus almost hit Earth, cooked all the creatures, created all my mud fossils, created Caesar Augustus, my goose, his feathers and everything. I think I've talked about the chemistry. It's all understood now. Now it just has to be looked at with even like this. This is right here from my property. It's a hair follicle. That's where the erector muscle attaches, right there. That makes your hair go up and down on end like that. That right there is the sebaceous gland. And of course that's where the hair shaft comes up. And it's a flat-sided hair. And I'm told that that is from a curly-haired person. And of course there's the vein and artery at the bottom and a hair shaft. This is 1,000 times bigger than ours. It's 2 inches wide, and ours are 2/1000ths of an inch. So that would be 1,000 times bigger than ours. Now, is it human? I have no idea, but that still doesn't matter. It's pretty big. They're just not that size now. They're the big. I don't know how big the biggest one is, but a human one is about. They claim 2/1000ths of an inch. So that would make it 1,000 times bigger. And again, I have so much stuff on this, it's amazing. And these are the books my friend Paul Amatucci put out. And you can get them on Amazon. Just look it up, Paul Amatucci, Roger Spur, whatever. And they're not expensive, and they're not real, you know, they're not really deep. But they're an introduction. It's just introductions. And hopefully at some point we'll have the full layout, because he's doing them all. And he's got some other ones here. This is a great one. Well, the electron flow theory is good, but this one here is a great one too. This is his book. It has nothing to do with me. And this is pretty deep. This goes on and on and on. So the guy's a nice guy too, and he's like I say, they're on Amazon. This one's Anunnaki Intelligence. Something was going on here long ago that we have no clue about, no idea about, until we examine what the things that I'm showing. There's no way to deny some of these things. You know, we can at least talk about them. Let me say, there's no way to dismiss them. All right, that's the key. And we talked about iron meteorites. Well, here's the one right here. This is a lung. That's a lung. And right there's still a little bit of blood there. Right in that right above that bar. You see that little red spot? All right, they all have their little alveoli and blood arteries, and the red blood, I'll tell you, it preserves very well. It creates iron. That's what this is. This is a metal meteorite. Now, this here is a lung, but it didn't come through space, but it's saturated with blood. Almost all the blood, well, the blood is saturated with metals. I showed you, there's no question whatsoever. However, there is a preponderance, a majority is iron. because that's what carries the oxygen. Oxygen, you just pump like gallons of it. I mean, there's so much oxygen flows through you, it's just unbelievable. And that's why you cut off your breath for a few minutes, it's all over. And the cells die. All right, so that's what, mostly you're going to have red blood and black. The red is the oxygenated blood, black is the deoxygenated. I think I've showed that quite well. And that is smelted coming through space. Normally that would have exploded. That's an exception. It had to come in just the right way, and as the Earth was doing this or that at night, and I don't know what. But it had to have smelted it just enough to hit the right temperature and not explode it. And then it would have had to do it probably sort of slowly. So it probably came way on the outside and it'll come around the whole Earth maybe for a day or two. And then into the Earth's atmosphere, something like that. Very unusual. All right, this is what I love about research. Every little thing trips off another little excursion. You know, they call it a rabbit hole, call it whatever you want. But I was just talking about this lung. How could it have been so perfectly intact? And I think I understand it now. And it's got to do with the layers of the temperature layers of the outer atmosphere and how it must have come in. Now let me show you Psyche. Psyche also turned into metal, you see it? But it's not 100% metal. All of this stuff is metal, where they had a thinner veneer of metal. I'm sure inside it's still saturated with blood. And I mean literally wet, red, liquid blood. Literally. But here it's seared. Now, why would this happen? And this is still in space. And how would it happen where this one came to Earth? And how come it'd be so perfect? I mean, it's almost identical to the lung when it would, you know, it looks like it splayed stuff back and it came through like a bullet almost. To me, it looks like that, because that's the main cavity, I would say. Now, this piece is broken off. There was another piece that completed that lung. So that that's the normal look of a lung. And this is where that latch attaches this lung to the next body part. It's a lock. They all have them. They all have a latch there. This one left with what it was locked to. So I would say this came through space like this and pushed all the softer stuff back to a bullet shape. Now here's what I'm thinking, is that it came through the atmosphere like this, and it sort of was pulled into the gravity of the Earth, and it's spinning around, getting closer and closer. It might have gone a couple of different, like, I don't know how long it went, but let's say it comes through out here. There's no real heat out here, but up here it's 1,500 degrees Celsius. This is where it says it destroys the meteorites. Well, what if it came in on just a certain plane where it sort of settled in a little bit, something like that. I don't know exactly. Maybe it came in sharp enough and then twisted off, or I don't know. But then you get down to here, you have hot, cold. It's a dipole. Everything is a dipole. This is 1,500 degrees Celsius. Now that's almost 3,000 degrees. That's why they turn these these meteorites into iron, because they burn off everything at 3,000 degrees except the metals. But then, right underneath, it's minus 80 degrees Celsius. I think that's 130 below zero, something like that. It's ridiculous. So that would cool it down so that when it got down lower, it would be a solid piece of iron. It must have come on a real angle like this. And we spent enough time in the cold that it's hardened it up into just like a chunk of iron, which is what it ended up being. That's the only thing I could think. And this is what happens. The hotter this gets out here, the colder this gets here. The colder this gets here, the hotter it gets down here. And that's what we've got. That's why we got global warming down here, because this is getting hotter out here. The more we expand our atmosphere and it scrubs this outside zone, the hotter it's going to get. I don't know what the temperature is now, but I'm going to tell you right now, the more you scrub out here, as we spin through space, this layer has to scrub. That's why it's 1,500 degrees, and they call it the ionosphere. Ionosphere. That means it's mostly electrons because of the scrub. And then the dipolarness of everything is that right below, it's going to be colder than can be. All right, this is a drop. This zone right here is the center of the dipole. The hotter it gets here, the colder it gets here. The colder it gets here, the hotter it gets right down below. And it's that. And by the time it hits the Earth, it's warming back up again. So it's hot, cold, hot. All right, so I like I said, I was going to do a humorous thing on it, which I did, and then I thought, boy, that's kind of stupid. So this is the introduction to stupidity. Okay, I try to make it funny because nobody's listening, so I figure, well, I'll make it funny. That's kind of stuff people listen to sometimes. But anyway, this is my hero, Immanuel Velikovsky. He did all the work, and he went to every culture on the face of the planet, and they all had the same story. And now, with my work on the material evidence that supports his documentation of these events, as far as I'm concerned, there's very little room that this is wrong, or very little room that it's silly, and the Triassic era was 400 million years ago. No, it was 1500 BC, and that's the 3 layers, and I have it right here in my region. I am in the Triassic zone in a rift basin, studied very carefully. There's 3 layers: the red bed, the gray clay, the black cap, and I have those layers, and I have an actual human footprint in between those layers. They were all wet at the same time within days. The red bed, the gray clay, both wet at the exact same time because the footprint pushed through and stamped the gray clay below the red bed, and then the black cap came because that was from all the combustibles and the volcanics and all that turbulence in the atmosphere settled down, the black cap. But below that was the gray clay, which was the boiled off flesh. And below the gray clay is the red bed, which is the really red, bloody, really wet stuff that boils off right away. And that settled first, the red bed. Then the gray clay, which is the, bony parts and body stuff. And then the black cap came on top. Now where I live, it preserved almost all of the body organs and so forth. And even like my goose here, Caesar. All right, that's where his throat is right there. Somebody asks, where's his throat? Well, it's transition. There it is right there. They fill in with either silicates, or they transition with the transition metals and stabilize whatever flesh was there, whatever body tissue was there, bones. And there's bones in here. I could find the bones if I look under the microscope. You could see them. You could see the pattern of them. You can see his throat right there. But you gotta spend some time and put it under a microscope. And if you pay attention closely, it's not that hard to see. But you have to. You can't just dismiss everything. Oh, there's nothing there to just. And again, this is extremely dense in collagen. Collagen breaks down to aluminum silicates. All right, the sulfur, and that's exactly what they found on Bennu: sulfur, phosphorus, and then clays, which a clay is nothing more than flesh. And I'm sure that chemistry that they go through up there is going to show that it is blood. And here it is on Earth. We spent billions of dollars to get this. I'd like to see if it is. Or, they're always talking about they want to know this stuff. But I don't really think that's the case. Let's examine what we have. I have a meteorite here, which is a lung that has blood still in it. And that's no question whatsoever. Now, can you get DNA out of it? I don't know. But it is a meteorite lung. Magnets stick to it. And it is a lung, there's no question about that. Like I said, I've looked at it very, very carefully. So it's time to confront mud fossils. They prove everything that Velikovsky said, and they support these ancient texts that were just thought of as insane. Enoch and all this crazy stuff about giants miles tall. You saw what's out in space, and if you look at Comet 67P, that's a stunner. That's a hip joint, and it's spewing out gases and cooked gases when it hits the sun just the right way. It's just not stuff blowing off. It is streaming out barbecue gases, and the astronauts say when they step out and come back in, their suits smell like steak and burning metals, which is nothing more than what I just showed you is in the blood. It's nothing. It's just saturated with metals. All right, these are all the metals that are in the blood. I want to know what's on Bennu. I want to know what's in the blood or what's in the samples they came back with. This is 26 elements in the whole blood, plasma, and serum. All right, and they're going to be a little different here or there, and there's going to be some differences in space because you're going to have a lot of radiation. You know, and the radiation ionizes things. It drives off electrons, and then they go through a decay cycle, and then it gives off daughter isotopes. Those are isotopes, and that's another thing they really can't account for very easily. With the standard model, it doesn't work well when you get into isotopes. Where do all those isotopes come from? You know, there's a bazillion. Here's my. Like I say, this always goes through a whole series of things. Everything is made of particles, but they're not made of protons like a gigantic one big ball proton. It's 1,823 dipoles. Every one is an electron, a magnet. Boop. And when it hits 1823 as a proton, it says, that's good, I'm good. I don't want any more. Well, actually a proton is a charged particle. It's an uneven number, 1823. So it wants one more to attach to, or it wants to give one up to become neutral, which a neutron is 1824. So we got to start with understanding even what the molecules out there, and even light, because light is nothing more than two of these particles together. And when you have two of them together, it creates a stable circular field around it, which bounces, and that's what light does. And that's two of them. But now you're not stable anymore until you get to 1823 or 24. You're unstable. And when I say unstable, you're going to have chunks like this, which are radioactive. If that bounces into you, it'll go and it'll snap into your cells and do whatever it does to the cell, DNA and so forth. That's what radioactivity is, big chunks. We worked with light when we did our research, but that's a whole other issue. But it's all combined together. Anyway, this is what I want to know. What did they find out there? Now I'm going to show you my silly thing I did. Okay, my friends, get ready. We are journeying to the outer reaches of the solar system. And what do I mean by that? Well, we're going to go to Mars. Yeah, we're going to go to Mars. And I am going to be the guy on Mars reporting back to ground control what I see. Let's see what happens when Roger gets on Mars. Okay, get ready, get ready, get ready. A giant volcano spanning 280 miles wide discovered on Mars, scientists say. Hidden in plain sight. It's been there forever. We just never even knew it was there. And now everybody's talking about it. As soon as one guy jumps on a bandwagon, it's all over. Scientists discover giant Mars, Olympus Mountain shield volcano, giant discovery on Mars. Meet Noctis, a giant volcano, Olympus Mons, giant volcano, giant shield volcano, Olympus Mons. Then they go on and on and on to talk about how they just discovered this giant volcano. It's not a giant volcano, it's an impact crater. Okay, so let's get ready to go to Mars. In a groundbreaking announcement at the 55th Lunar Planetary Science Conference held in Woodlands, Texas, scientists revealed the discovery of a giant volcano, possible sheet of buried glacier ice in the eastern part of Mars, the volcano Providence near the planet's equator. This is the giant volcano. Let's take a look at that closely because I have a different interpretation. And I will be up on Mars looking directly at what is on Mars and reporting back. Roger, over. Okay, ground control, this is Roger, over. Do you read? Yes, they read. Okay, what are we going to be looking at? Well, we're going to be looking at the newly discovered giant volcano. I've got my picture up. Houston, can you read? Roger, over. They read. Now, what are we going to try to figure out? Is this a gigantic volcano? Well, Houston, I'm going to call up some of my other pictures here about this gigantic volcano. And here it is right here. Wow, that doesn't look like a volcano to me. I would say that was an impact site. Houston, what do you think? Let's look at what it looks like from a distance. That is a very strange formation, Houston. And this is how wide it is as big as the United States. The impact is here, and the scrape zone is all the way across here. Let's look at that again, Houston. Okay, here it is. That, I would say, Houston, was a scrape. And there was a story written in the ancient texts about Venus impacting Mars and destroying it. And when we looked at Venus, can you call up the Venus slide? Yes, Houston, here it is. There it is right there. Well, that's a very interesting looking impact zone. If this did, Venus here, collide with Mars, this is like a welding arc. If a welder was to look at this, they would say, yes, this is exactly what you would expect to see in a welding arc. And Venus spins backwards, which gives it an unbelievable charge. It's over 800 degrees. And when it impacted with Mars, it wiped out Mars and stripped right across the surface, right here. And all of those electric discharges came off the sides, creating all of those spiky looking effects, which are here. All right, that was the story that was written in the ancient texts. Are you reading this, Houston? Houston, are you there? No, I think I lost him. Okay, my friends, we lost touch with Houston. That's okay. We can live without Houston. Let's go down to the surface and see what we find. All right, the first thing we're going to see is the Mars blueberries. And these are little blueberry balls that are all over the place up there in certain areas. Where Curiosity landed in 2014, these are the first things it saw was these blueberries. And it also saw this, which they made a big joke out of, which is the Mars crab. All right, you see the crab-looking thing right there with the legs sticking out of it, that round structure? The red-looking thing in the center, and then this tube above it. It's coming right out of here, and this is the structure of the rocks with all these slits right next to each other, right next to that crab. And they just slough that off as nothing. Don't worry about it. It means nothing. So we saw the blueberries, we saw the crab, and then they also found what they called the Mars Morse code, another completely unexplained anomaly. And this, I have got my interpretation of it, and I'll explain to you what it is very shortly. And all of those three things, this and the other two, are biology. Mars is made of the exact same things that Earth is made of, and it is biological, as Earth is. Okay, this one picture shows the Mars blueberries. On Earth, we call them the Moki marbles. And it shows the what's called interstitium, which is this stuff right here, which is right underneath the surface layer of skin or fascia. You have the interstitium. So this shows the Mars blueberries, and that's the Mars Morse code. Remember those Morse code looking things laying all over with the balls and the straps? That's what this is right here. That's just skin right underneath. That's how your skin can move around and then come back to where the balls are anchored. And this is how big it is here on Earth. All right, this is Hunstanton Beach, Hunstanton Cliffs over in the United Kingdom. These are the same balls as these, only this was from a smaller creature, and the flesh eroded away, which is nothing more than mud, and we can see it right here. And that is a product of this just eroding down. And the balls are falling from the walls. And that was the skin above, or mucosa, fascia, whatever you want to call it. And here's what it looks like anatomically. So what did we just account for? We accounted for the Mars blueberries, which are nothing more than the Moki marbles. And what else did we account for? We accounted for the Mars Morse code. And that Mars Morse code has the blueberries built into it too. See the little ones? These are the blueberries, but the straps have eroded. The blueberries, the balls, they're tough. They don't erode very easily at all. But the straps, you see it's stretched out here. This is probably a high spot, and it's been just sandblasted basically. And it's removed the stretchy, gooey stuff, but left the anchor balls. All right, there's three different densities of stuff here. All right, the balls are the toughest. They don't go away. But then these little straps are a little gooier, and then the rest is this stuff, which is gooey, fleshy, and it's just eroded because of being sandblasted. Now that is pinched skin or flesh, whatever. So is that. This is normal, just a nice normal pattern. It can go this way, that way, any way it wants. And then it will come back. This is stretched this way and pinched this way. A little stretch here, pinch. Big stretch, pinch. All right, so now we've accounted for those two anomalies. Now, what about the Mars crab? What is going on with that? Okay, so this is the Mars crab. And this is what it looks like in its position in this wall. Well, let's see what it looks like really up close. That, my friends, I'm going to tell you right now, is inside of muscle. This is the feeder tube that feeds the arteries into the muscle tissue. That's the vein which brings the blood back. This is the blood being delivered. And these right here are sarcomeres. This is where the artery is, providing all the nutrition for these sarcomeres, which are muscle fibers, and they pull in according to like here and here. All right, they slide in together. That's where all that connective tissue comes together, and the red stuff pulls it together. I'll show you the anatomical. Now, again, this is just all dusted out because all the red stuff is the gooey stuff, and it just erodes out in this non-watery environment. And I can tell you, this is on Mars because there is no rivulets, there's no runoff whatsoever of water. And the same thing on the Mars Morse code. Zero runoff, zero. I mean, it's just like somebody sandblasted it. There's no water here, let me put it that way, in this area for sure. All right, you saw the Mars crab. This is that muscle sarcomeres that were down below. The crab was over here somewhere, feeding all of the blood into here, and I mean a ton of blood. And I'll show you, and I can show you this very clearly, how much blood is needed to service this muscle. Now, these little red spots pull in together with the white like that, and you end up with the muscle being contracted. This is a relaxed muscle. This is a contracted muscle. And of course, this is, a microscope electron microscope shot of muscle sarcomeres. These are sarcomeres. And that's how they pull together. Now remember these stripes going down. These are the erosive areas. They rode out of there because these are literally glue. The blocks are glued together and they can rip. That's what a rip in a piece of muscle is, when it rips this little band apart. Because there's nothing more than glue. And these just slide together to create, a contraction of the muscle. Now, let's take another look at the Mars crab, and then we'll go from there. All right, so don't forget, all of these little legs are little blood vessels going in to all of this muscle. Every single muscle cell has to be provided with fresh, clean blood, and especially when you're running and doing exercise, a ton of blood flushing through your body. Now, remember those little stripes up and down and all those little connective tissues? That's right there. These are muscles. These are muscles. And that fed those muscles. Now, I can show you this. I have one in my shop here that's similar. It didn't erode like this, but it does have the artery and all the red, and then the muscle. I'm going to show you that. But this is very, very large, and it is on Mars, and they just laughed it off. And I'm showing you the things that are on our Earth and the things that are on Mars, same size. As far as I could tell, there is nothing that isn't biology. So just a refresher, the Moki marbles, Mars blueberries, same. These balls, same. This here, the fleshy stuff, same. The skin, same. In us, these balls are so small that you need an extremely powerful electron microscope to see them. But they're here. Now, on Mars, we see them. On Earth, we see them. Everywhere. Now, you see that? That's muscle. All right, there's a guy's van is over here. And that is muscle. They don't erode and do this. This is connective tissue within muscle. The red is the artery stuff that's run off, just like it did up on Mars. The Earth is literally a corpse. It's just what it is. Now I'm going to show you the sarcomeres again, and I'm going to give you a shocker. I'm amazed I didn't get any response whatsoever to what caused the Turkey earthquake. And I'll show you. This is just firstly, no question, what caused it. All right, don't forget, these are the sarcomeres. You see these? And they were flushed with blood here and there. Now watch this. This is cut across a piece of stone, which is perfectly preserved sarcomeres. Remember I showed you the sarcomeres before. There they are right there, and when they pull together. Now look at this. You see how much blood is in there? You see how much blood is in between these muscle fibers? They have to be completely saturated with blood. Now guess what? Blood runs off very easily. It runs out, and the red blood is very fluidy. Now, in this case, it stayed in here and didn't run out because this is basically what it would look like in your body. Usually, when they petrify, the red blood runs out. But this, fortunately, stayed like this, and we can see how much red blood is in there. Now, I'm going to shock you. I saw what happened in Turkey. Turkey has this as the ground cover in this olive grove, and it collapsed. These sarcomeres, because they can break along these lines. Don't forget, here's what they look like. They break along these lines if they get eroded. If somebody was to wash out a bunch of blood, or it just washed out underneath, these things would start collapsing, and that's exactly what happened in Turkey. All right, this is Turkey right here. This is exactly what happened. This is an olive grove, and it's running down this way. Now, inside that olive grove, whoops, wow, I really got in there. Inside that olive grove is these sarcomeres. These are exactly the same as the sarcomeres. You see up here? You see that right there? There's red blood running into these sarcomeres. And these are sarcomeres. Now, underneath here, somewhere over here, I found there was a real red bloody spot. Well, you can see the red blood runs out. Where the red blood runs out, it makes the surface weak. And because they can crack on those seams, the whole thing just collapsed. Now, whether somebody was digging under here into that red blood or whether the red blood just ran out, I don't know. But I'm sure there was a layer of red blood in there that was very thick, because it takes a ton of red blood to service muscle. This is muscle. Even though it's an olive grove, it's muscle. All right, and they're on the skin surface, basically, of the muscle, and below is where the muscle is. It's just what we have, and this is it right here, exactly what it was. This is up here, which was the skin sort of stuff. It's got blood in it too. But then when you get into the muscle, you really got some blood. Now, whether it washed out from underneath and then just collapsed, or whether somebody's digging under there, I don't know. But I'm sure that's why the whole thing collapsed, because this was a gigantic earthquake. You know, they call it an earthquake, but it was a collapse. And it was absolutely not an earthquake. Earthquake, they just split, basically. This, the whole thing just collapsed, and a big piece. And I would watch out for wherever they could see any red blood running out, or red runoff coming out. That would be coming out of an artery, which would be undermining the surface layers. Now, I tried to report this to Turkey and everywhere else. I raised my voice about this, trying to make people understand what they're living on. They're living on body tissue. That's blood. And these are the sarcomeres. And above up here is the skin. I know it sounds just absolutely insane, but I didn't do it. It's not my fault. All right, this stuff is just the way it is. And there's blood here and there everywhere. Here's a nice red bloody spot. I think this should be taken into consideration, but that's just me. I'm sorry that I have to go over this again, but if I was Turkey, I would be looking into this. It's exactly identical. Here's the surface skin, basically, and the surface for them is dirt. But watch right below, it starts into the sarcomeres. If you can't understand what you're seeing, I don't know how I can help. Look. This is it right here. This is the skin up at the top. Just exactly what we were seeing before, that skin. And then right underneath is the sarcomeres, which is the muscle. And then there's blood in here and so forth. Exactly like I just showed you in the slice of stone, which obviously is quite a bit smaller, but it's no difference whatsoever. None. That's the dirt up at the top, the skin, and then you get into here. And when that runs out, it's undermined. And then you're set up for a collapse. And you can see how steep that hill is. You see? So stuff will be running off here. From inside, is it running off? I don't know. But I certainly wouldn't be digging any tunnels underneath there. Because these are in blocks. They'll just shear right off. Exactly like up on Mars. Everything there is, as far as I'm concerned, is made out of biology. There is nothing that isn't biology. Even the comets, the meteorites, the asteroids, everything I've found. Asteroid Bennu, they just came back with a sample, and I'm going to guarantee you that will be exactly what blood is. You know, it could be one of the 3 different types of the blood. There's the vein blood, the artery blood, and the serum, which is all coming out of a heart, because Bennu is a heart. All right, so ground control to Major Tom, we got an issue with what you see when you look around.